Here is a poem written by Jamie Bond. I've used a few pivotal sentences that describe this video. They call her a runaway, a drunk, an addict, a slut. When her pictures go missing from tree trunks and lampposts, we do not see her when her body is found, wrapped in garbage bags, tucked behind a pile of rotting wood. No one tells her parents that their daughter is dead, leaving them to comb the greasy grass along the river's edge. Detectives ignore the tips and lead and fail to file warrants. Burn her down to ash. I have a question. I feel this was a trap. Do you? Her family says her name every day. Rallies, vigils, calling on federal aid to help them find the answers that they so desperately need. Half-truths, ignored calls. It's been going on 4 years now. There still haven't been any answers, any closure. Grace Bulltell is the aunt of the missing young woman. She grew up in Bighorn County. She says she helped her grandparents raise Kaysera. She considers Kaysera her own daughter. Kaysera was part of the Crow tribe and Crow reservation. Grace says Kaysera was kind, compassionate. Though she faced a lot of hardships on the reservation, life in Bighorn County is a different world. There are a lot of missing and murdered indigenous women. It's not a safe place. Her 18-year-old niece, Kaysera Stops Pretty Places, was unfortunately one of them. She says if something happens to you or your loved ones, you are on your own. If the family hadn't spoken out about this, no one would even know. August 24th, 2019, Kaysera doesn't come home. August 25th, 2019, she doesn't show up for a family trip. Geraldine Bulltell, her mother, says the two were supposed to visit relatives in North Dakota. Kaysera was looking forward to that. She isn't on social media. That is unlike an 18-year-old girl. So on the 25th, later on that day, another aunt, Priscilla Brown Bulltell, attempts to try to put in a missing persons report for Kaysera. The police tell her there has been a waiting period before she can put in a report to the National Crime Information Center. On the 29th of August, a body is found by someone in that area. Priscilla shows up to the scene on behalf of the grandmother, wanting to know who it was. Priscilla asks to identify the body, but she is denied. Authorities refuse to even say if the body belongs to Kaysera. Another hopeless day for the family. On the 1st of September, Kaysera's mother and other family members show up to Billis Mortuary to see if the body is of the missing young woman. They tell her it is not Kaysera's. The family holds vigils and continue to search. On September 11th, Bighorn County officials were notified that Kaysera's body had been found on a property in the corner of a backyard on Mitchell Avenue and Rangeview Drive. An attorney in Bighorn County read statements released, reports from 4 different witnesses, first-hand knowledge. 3 a.m., an argument involving 18-year-old Kaysera and 3 others, 17 and 19-year-old females and a 23-year-old male. According to a report, Kaysera had been hanging out there at the house on Rangeview Drive. The person that lived there had brought Kaysera alcohol. A nearby homeowner activated a car alarm to scare and disperse the group. They fled in different directions. Kaysera was seen running towards the backyard, where her body was later discovered, close to the resident who had bought her the alcohol. The autopsy reports read, no evidence of injury of natural disease. Toxicology testing of blood detected the presence of ethanol, and there weren't any neck injuries or asphyxiation due of death. However, they say it cannot be concluded. The report also states that 0.149 blood ethanol concentration in her on her time of discovery. On September 12th, 2019 through September 16th, 2019, Kaysera's father, Alan Stopp, another family member, went to visit the site where Kaysera was found. There is no crime scene tape up. No demarcation of where the body was even at. It's almost as if nothing has even occurred there. With people who lived across the street, they would help the family. They would pen out where Kaysera's final moments were, where she laid. Shockingly, it's in a highly public area. How was Kaysera there for days and no one even knew? There is traffic there all day long, people walking up and down the street. The family receives permission to access this site to perform a cultural ceremony. They are also told by the person who had found Kaysera that the police had taken Kaysera's cell phone right out of her pocket. The police officer had told him he was going to charge it up and contact the family. On September 16th, 2019, Yolanda Frazier, grandmother, reaches out to request information on her granddaughter's missing persons report. It was false information given to the family. There wasn't any waiting periods. Missing people under 21 are considered a priority. Kaysera, again, was 18. There wasn't even any paperwork stating that the family had came in there to put in the missing persons report. I'm siding with the family. I know that they put in a missing persons report. How could they not? Her grandmother and other family members arrived to the funeral home to finally see Kaysera. Kaysera's remains are not there. Terry Bullis, the coroner, he says she will be there in 45 minutes, but 45 minutes later, still no remains have arrived. Bullis says it is time for him to close the building. However, the family refuse and they're not leaving. They're not going to wait until tomorrow to see Kaysera, which I'm sure was an inconvenience for Bullis. Kaysera's remains arrived about an hour and a half later, and to the ultimate shock of the family, she has been cremated, which is against their beliefs. No one has been asked. She has a grandmother, which is her legal guardian, her parents, which are both still alive, and a host of aunts and other family members that the proper authorities could have contacted someone, but without authorization, they have cremated her. The family isn't comfortable with what has happened at all. September 19, 2019, Kaysera's grandmother and father hand-delivered notarized requests to the BHC, Bighorn County, for all reports regarding Kaysera's case. They call a reporter from the Billings Gazette. There have been no or very little coverage concerning her death. They finally meet with Captain Mike Fuss of the BHC after numerous attempts to meet him, but he says he has been busy. That's why no calls have been returned. He is also confused as to who they are, thinking Priscilla is the guardian, though she showed no paperwork, and I thought he didn't know who they were. They ask why the crime scene wasn't secured. He says the investigators get there first, and that job is for the police officers afterwards. The family asks why no one has charged Kaysera's phone. Fuss looks surprised. He didn't know they even knew that the police actually had her phone. He says the battery is dead. He adds they couldn't even get inside that kind of phone, and the FBI couldn't even get inside that kind of phone. The family offers to charge it up. Her father and grandmother sign a release to receive the phone and access to her social media account. They discuss further with Mike Fuss. He says the investigator was taken off the case. He, quote, couldn't handle it, end quote. So a second investigator has actually been issued to Kaysera's case. I wonder why the first investigator couldn't handle this case. He also says that Bullis, the coroner, had, quote, snatched the body from the crime lab, end quote, which explains the defensive marks. So Kaysera had defensive marks. The family wouldn't have known that. She was cremated without permission. Fuss seemed annoyed when the family told them that they have a $5,000 reward for information on Kaysera. He also told them that Kaysera had died from alcohol poison, and she died right on the spot, and that her body was found at 6:43 p.m., though the newspapers reported it had been found in the morning. Throughout the next few days, the family is getting the runaround. No clear answers. Authorities dodging phone calls and avoiding them. Why? On September 27th, 2019, Yolanda has her son call the hotline with a tip. Yolanda has no trust in anything at this point. Her son calls. The dispatcher can't take the tip. An officer will have to call him back at 7 p.m. 2 hours later, around 9, an officer calls back. Bullis, the coroner, had been in trouble with the state board before. Questions have still been unanswered about why Kaysera was cremated. On September 30th, Kaysera's aunt, Tiffany Glenn, reaches out to the FBI and requests an investigation into her niece's death. The FBI tells her they need more evidence that her death occurred on a reservation. However, there is no evidence that it had occurred on or off. Was this just another word confusement to say that they were disinterested, or they just were not going to continue investigating? But they have an obligation to protect, which includes Native people, Native women, and Native children. On October 1st, 2019, Bighorn County Attorney called the Missing and Murdered Persons Task Force to address all suspicious deaths. Kaysera's case was referred to Missoula County Sheriff's Office. Only a review of evidence and no additional investigation. The efforts due to COVID is why they claim that it couldn't be continued then. Again, answers and justice put on hold. However, the investigation is still open and active. So at this point, you're probably thinking, she was young. Something unfortunate happened. Maybe it was alcohol poisoning. If you lived in the UK, they would call this death by misadventure. That's how they would say it. But on August of 2019, Kaysera films and she posts to her social media account. It's still there. The law enforcement at a Crow Fair is beating her 15-year-old brother, who just so happens to be in a wheelchair. It was publicly said that the officer involved in this video was the responding officer who had been sent to Kaysera's body. In Kaysera's own words, she said, "This isn't right. He has the right to speak." And she was talking about this concerning her brother. So now we're in 2023 and the family is still looking for answers concerning Kaysera Stop's Pretty Place's death. My question again, was this a trap? As of yet, there has been no justice. Say her name.